Hey guys, Dirt here. Welcome back. We are going to be hopping in the photo tent again to take a look at some figures, and today we're going to be looking at the DC Comics Multiverse Batman line. Now these are figures based off Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, I think Arkham Origins, there's a character from there. And we're going to be taking a look at two versions of Batman, a Bane, Asriel, and Deadshot. Unfortunately, I do not have the Mr. Freeze. I have not been able to find that one, so we won't be taking a look at that today. But we will be taking a look at the figures. We will be comparing them a little bit, just because we can, with the new DC Collectibles Injustice line, 3 3/4 inch or 4 inch figures if you prefer. We will also be comparing it to the old Mattel Infinite Heroes line, because, you know, they're basically, this is the last big figure line that they did in this scale, besides those, you know, movie tie-in cheap ones that they've been throwing out there. This was the last, like, really good one that seems to be on par with these, so we'll be comparing it with that. We also have a Marvel Universe Baron Zemo figure here that I'm going to use to do some comparisons also. So we're going to be taking a look at the figures and how they look and how they compare to some of the others. So let's hop into the photo tent. And as you can see right now, we've got a Arkham City Batsuit Batman. This is more or less what you're going to consider your plain, ordinary Batman. For anyone who's been buying the Mattel DC figures for the last couple years, you've seen this same basic packaging for different Batman figures that you've seen. Of course, on the back, you've got the video game logo, you've got a little bit talking about the character, you've got the video game artwork, you've got some other figures. So it's basically everything that you've come to expect from the Mattel type of packaging. Nothing really all that special or different, but very familiar, which is nice for a lot of toy collectors. So let's bump into the table. We just did that. Let's rip this open. Get a look at the figure. Now, one thing that I've complained about sometimes are all the different ties, twist ties and cables and everything else that they throw into a lot of these figures to hold them into place, but then it makes it a nightmare to get them out. It looks like this one only has one invisible band on his feet. We'll show it in here. We've got one invisible band right there, but otherwise it looks like everything's held in place more or less by his cape going through that hole in the plastic, so we can more or less pop them out and pull them through, and easy enough. Okay, so as a figure, I think if you've played any of the Arkham games, you more or less know what to expect in his look. We do have figure stand holes here, so if you do have any figure stands that fit this size character, that'll work rather well. And we actually can do a quick comparison here. If we grab the package and show the figure, I don't know how well the face actually shows up here on the screen in the artwork, but that actually is a pretty good likeness. You can see some differences in the belt, but you know, otherwise, for the most part, figure looks pretty good. And we can kind of stand him up here, and let's take a little zoom in on him. Now, if we compare him, say, to the look of the Infinite Heroes Batman, you can see that they are in scale with each other, more or less. The Arkham City one is a little bulkier, but for the most part they do look like they could be in the more or less the same universe, same line, whatever. And taking a look at the figure, you can see that he's got standard shoulder socket that we've come to expect in a line like this. Elbow, though, just a pin joint, nothing really special going on there. The wrist does twist, so that's kind of nice. The head twists. The cowl is actually all one piece from the neck going down the back. You don't usually see that. And there's a spot here where it looks like you can glue the cape in to make it sturdier. Let's see, hips. Hips are just kind of the standard joint there, like the shoulder. We've got a pin joint in the knee, but then we also have that twist right there. But there's no twist on the upper part of the arm to match it, only in the wrist. If we come down here to the foot, no movement in the foot. So you've got your articulation here, 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 neck. Do we have any waist? Oh, we do have a waist turn. So he is actually less articulate than the Infinite Heroes figure. This came out several years ago. He had basically the same shoulder, the same elbow, the same wrist, but here in the hips you can see he had a ball in the hip that made his legs much easier to articulate, and also had a small point here in the foot that could move around, which this guy does not have. Although the cowl, again, on the Infinite Heroes figure, just went over the shoulders. The neck was painted the same, whereas on here it's actually covering the entire neck. So this looks nicer as a figure, but it's not quite as articulated as the Infinite Heroes line. Now, if we compare it to something from the DC Collectibles line, like Deathstroke here, Deathstroke does not move at the hands, or at the wrist, I guess, rather, but the head did move, but he has the ab crunch, and that's something that all of the Injustice figures have, is that ab crunch, which you can see is obviously not on there. But otherwise, legs, knees, although the feet do have a joint in there, so you can move the feet on the Injustice ones, which you cannot do on the Mattel line. So, a little bit of give and take. I don't know, I think maybe this, because it's coming off of the computer graphics, looks overall a little sleeker, a little nicer, a little more detailed. The Injustice figure you can see is actually smaller, so I guess this would be 3 3/4 and that would be 4 inch. You can see a little bit of the difference in size there. And I don't think Batman is supposed to be a head taller than Deathstroke. So that's just the difference in the line. This is probably more of, you know, when an artist draws it, they have their own style and their own way of putting a character together, whereas, you know, this Batman comes from the video game, looks much more realistic. If we go to our Baron Zemo here, this is from the Marvel Universe line. He's got a lot more articulation in the head. It's more than just a twist. It actually has a lot of movement there. He's got the ball in the shoulders to get a lot more movement. His legs have a cut up here instead of down at the knee, so it's similar to having that ball joint like we saw in the Infinite Heroes figure, but not quite the same. And he does have foot movement that you don't see here. He also has that ab crunch and a waist twist. So both of those together makes it much easier to pose one of these Marvel Universe figures as opposed to this figure from Mattel. But overall, I think he looks good. He looks like the character from the video game. And overall, you can see there's some nice little paint application details that they've put in. Nothing, you know, special, but overall, I think he looks okay. And considering the price on these aren't expensive figures. These are, gosh, I don't even remember. I bought them at Target, I think, and they were less than $10 a piece, I can tell you that. So, you know, I mean, it's nothing too spectacular to get excited about as far as 4-inch figures go, but if you're a big fan of Batman and a big fan of these games, and of course these are some of the top-selling games, most highly rated games of the past couple years, I mean, obviously that's a big deal to a lot of people. So it is a nice tie-in, and he is a nice figure overall. So not really too many complaints. They've done some things a little bit better, some things not quite as good as some of the other lines, but I think everything kind of evens out in the end, and what you have here is a pretty good figure. Now, that Batman is not the only Batman in the line. They do have this other Batman, which is the Arkham City Armored Suit Batman. Let's switch out here real quick. We need to zoom back. And you can see here, this one, his suit is actually armor plates. It's got more of a silver finish on the paint. It's somewhat shiny. Some cat hair. Thank you to my cats for that. It also sends out electric charges, so they have these little electro bits coming out that you can put on his hands. You can see from the artwork on there. Again, the package is everything that you've come to expect from these figures. Nothing special. So let's go ahead and rip this guy open and take a look at what's inside. And, you know, none of these have any added accessories, really. I think Mr. Freeze is the only one. He's got a backpack. Asriel's got some weapons, I guess, but they don't come with a lot of extra stuff like some other figures do. And they don't come with stands. And I kind of wish they would come with stands. Figure stands are just phenomenal. Alright, so we have our armor-plated suit Batman. Now, these things, there are no instructions on how to attach these, so I guess it's supposed to be pretty easy for you to figure out. Does it go like this, maybe? It looks like there's a little peg on here. Let me zoom in. It looks like that would fit right in his hand. Maybe? More or less? No? Not at all. Kind of? A little bit? And it's very soft, very malleable. You can see he's shooting out his little electric bolt here. It's an alright effect. It's not spectacular. But it gets the job done. You understand what's happening. And the figure itself, let's see, did they just take the regular Arkham City Batman figure and just paint silver paint on top of them? No. We can see here that the gauntlets on the side are different. The chest, actually the chest has some extra lines actually carved in on those abs to give the metallic plate feel. We can see that the belt buckle is indeed different, and the pouches on there are different. And again, more armored plates actually carved in to the legs there. And the boots. And the boots are different also. They did put different plating there on the boots. So, I apologize. I keep looking at the figures and not looking through the camera there, so I keep missing what I'm supposed to be filming there. You can also see on the side there, there's his little, you know, control panel, interactive thing. So overall, you've got a different sculpt of Batman with a lot of small detail changes, nothing too major. If you wanted a Batman figure, you couldn't find the regular one, and all you could find was an armored one, I think you'd be okay. I don't think you'd really even notice that big of a difference. I think both of these figures stand up pretty well because of the articulation that they have. They can also kind of use their capes a little bit as a small cheat in order to fit better. The capes look the same, the cowl looks the same, the head sculpt is identical, but the rest of them is different. These things, I don't know if I would even really bother with these most of the time. They're just kind of a pain to get on there right. They don't really seem to... You would think that this little piece sticking down would go into his hand and this piece wraps around the arm, but to make them both work, it's like one can go but the other one can't, which is, I don't know. I don't know that I would even be worried about these. Although if they ever make a Superman Red and Superman Blue, you can use those for his crackling energy beams. But still, Batman figures look nice. Pretty happy with both of those. Alright, so let's move on to Bane. I like Bane because he wears a wrestler mask, and that kind of means something to me. If anyone is familiar with this is the Arkham Origins version, and Origins, I believe, wasn't that one on the Vita? They made that for the handheld, as opposed to Arkham City and Arkham Asylum which were on PC and the major consoles. Again, the package, plain, nothing too spectacular. You can see standing out. Same as all the others, no big deal. So, ripping him open. I'm sure there's some way you can open these without destroying everything, but I don't care. I'm just doing it, getting them out. Let's take one thing to point out real quick on here. No invisible bands. He is just simply sitting in that plastic shell. Kudos, Mattel, kudos on that one. You get bonus points. Now, it didn't really occur to me all that much looking at him in the package, but looking at him here in person, he is a big, beefy figure. I didn't really realize how big powerful he really is. He is a strong looking guy. Now they've done the same cheat that I think everybody does when he's wearing a jacket like this. The jacket is actually, the main part is the torso, and then the sleeves are just regular arms with sleeves sculpted on. I mean, we've come to expect that on toys just because it's the easiest way for them to do it, but still, there it is. You've got the same type joints, and I was just trying to see if his mobility was in any way hampered by this top of the jacket here, but it doesn't really look like it. Looks like they've done a pretty good job of doing it in such a way that it's not getting in the way of the rest of the arm. Everything else, though, looks the same as all the other joints that we saw on Batman. He still has the waist turn, and the legs do the same movement. Here, what's hanging on his belt is, I don't know what those are. Oh, duh, that's his venom. That's his drug that gives him his power. And they've actually, they've got it hanging down over the leg where it gets in the way, and there's no hinge or anything in there. So when you move the leg, you're actually bending this out of the way. And that's a good way to get something broken over time. This thing's going to break and fall off. So if you're buying one of these used, if it's 2020 right now, in the future, and you're looking at one of these things on eBay or at a toy show, make sure you take a good look at that and see how well that is still attached. Otherwise, the legs have the same twists and joints that we use. I will point out, though, that the texture on Bane, they've done a lot of work putting in these folds and creases and everything. And again, this is probably taken off of the 3D rendered model that's in the video game. So all of these creases and everything are probably just straight out of that 3D rendered model and you know, put into the 3D printer, the assembler, you know, whatever the heck they use for these. But it actually looks really good. It looks like there's a lot of texture. It looks like there's a lot of overlapping pieces, even though in effect this is just one big chunk of plastic. It does do a pretty good job of adding that extra detail. And his face, they made his face, you can actually see his eyes are in there. They are painted white, so he does have that mask effect that the comic books always have, where you put on a mask and the eyes disappear. Here they've just kind of painted them white. That wasn't an issue on Batman. If you look at Batman, he does have eyes. There are little irises, if I move my finger out of the way, I guess. There are little irises painted in there, whereas here on Bane, you don't have anything like that. So he does look a little different that way. And the paint on his face is a little sloppy. Instead of this being a good clean line coming up to a point, it looks a little funky here on the forehead. So it's not the most perfect job of paint on the face, but considering how small he is, considering they left the mouth open, they left the breathing holes in the nose, you can see that they didn't paint over the bottom part of the nose. You do have crease lines going over the eyes and across the forehead. You know, overall, he does look pretty good. So, there you go. Okay, so next up, we've got the DC Comics Asriel, and when I first saw this, I thought, why does it say DC Comics Asriel? And then I remembered, oh yeah, the Smurfs movie. That's Gargamel's cat. So, probably why they had to do that. One thing we can see on this figure compared to the others, all the others so far looked almost exactly like their artwork. Like they just kind of took that artwork and threw it into the machine and boom, you got a figure that looks like it. Unfortunately, this one stands out as being quite a bit different. For one thing, the fabric that's on Asriel in the game is much more tattered and ripped. And they've kind of simulated that by putting in some tears and some little rough edges here, but they don't really have that same kind of ripped effect. And another thing is he's painted pretty much clear white all the way down, whereas here he looks, you know, dirty, disheveled. He's been into a lot of fights. He's been injured. There's been blood splattered and mud on it, that type of thing, which you don't have on here at all. He looks brand new, fresh off the factory line. And maybe that's something because this is going into stores with kids. They don't want, you know, blood stains. They don't want it to look dirty. They want it to look like a new toy when you're buying a new toy. But he's a much more simplified version of the artwork compared to the other figures. So, again, ripping them open, taking a look. We can see that his cape in the back, the tatters aren't hanging down. Looks like some Big League Chew hanging off his back there. And we do have an invisible band right there. His gauntlet here is cutting through the plastic into the back, and so are these gauntlet fins back here. So he's the same way as Batman was held into place. Again, they put some invisible bands on the figures just to kind of hold them down, but overall they're using sticking through the plastic to hold them in place, which I do appreciate. So, taking a look at the figure, we can see a few things here. One, his face is pretty bad. This looks almost like those Jazzwares Mortal Kombat figures. This is Mortal Kombat 9 Scorpion. It looks like maybe Sub-Zero. I'm not sure, but it doesn't have a lot of definition, a lot of detail, and the eyes just kind of look a little funky, probably because of the way they're colored. It's just kind of hard to do anything with a face that really has no shape or detail, just kind of this blob with eyes underneath a hood and that mask. Again, his tunic, you know, there's one of the rips. If you look at the production artwork or you played the game, you know that there's like red armor underneath. So what they could have done is put a blob of red paint there to make it look like the red of the armor is showing through. Maybe they didn't want to because they already have the cross here, but it just seems like one of those things that they could have done to add that extra bit of detail. This weapon is in sad shape from being inside that case. That's one thing that happens when you use this as a point of holding it in place. You can just see that it's all bent out of shape. That'll take some time to kind of work it back into the straight and narrow it needs to be. And I guess the other big thing here on this figure is that we do have a sword that is supposed to pull out here. And it looks like the sheath can actually come all the way out, although, oh, it's just blank on the other side. It's, well, that's really cheap. I don't know if there's a particular reason why they did it that way, except maybe to save some money on plastic, but, boy, that looks really bad. And then on top of that, once you take it out, he's got this giant, I don't know, what is this, his handle? Are you supposed to carry him? Is Bane like so big and burly that he's just gonna pick up Asriel in there? Just carry him around? Hey buddy, I'm going to work, take my Asriel with me. Alright, the plastic here, it's a little tough for being something hanging down. This is nice and soft, but this one is not. And of course the back one is not either, which is going to make it difficult if you want to try to sit him down on anything. He's just not going to be able to sit and relax, which is a little bit of a shame there. And the sword fits into his hand just fine. Although, here's the funny thing. If the sword is going to be on this side, wouldn't he be pulling it out and using it in this hand? Reach across and pull it out? Because it's not like they pull straight up and out. I don't remember. Is that how the game does it? Or are they just being weird with this toy? I'm not sure. Even though he's got this armor up here, it's nice and soft and pliable. It's the same as his cape back here. And you can see they actually sculpted the cape with these pieces here overlapping. So it does have that kind of blowing in the wind look automatically. Same with this side. And his little tubes, they're fine. No big deal as far as those go. So, I don't think he holds up quite as well as some of the other figures. The big problem, I think, is really the tunic and the sword. If they had done something better with those, I think he would have stood out a little bit better overall. Again, you know, he's not god-awful or anything, but just not great. Could have used a little more time in the machine finishing him off. Finally, I was real excited actually for this one. I love Deadshot. Deadshot and Deathstroke are two of my favorite characters in the DC universe, so I'm really glad for them to be here. This is from Batman Arkham Origins Deadly Assassin is what it says. I don't know, is that another spin-off game? Or is that like downloadable content or something on there? Not exactly sure. Again, same package you've seen on everything else. Let's rip them open, take a look. And taking a look at the figure in the plastic here, just like Bane. Nothing holding him in place. And the character is, again, a bigger, beefy character than I would have thought for the figure. He does have the same articulation, it looks like, that the whole rest of the line has. So again, nothing terrible, but nothing spectacularly great. Looking at the figure himself, though, he's got some pretty good detail. This one, again, I think does the look of the character artwork better. I think Asriel is really the only one in the bunch that seems to kind of fall apart. He does a pretty good job. Again, they've got a lot of the different fabric and textures, the different details, all in the figure, and it could be just from the 3D model, you know, nothing too spectacular or special about a lot of that. The one thing I really wish, though, is that his wrist guns are, you know, the big part of who he is, and the fact that they move here at the wrist, but this gauntlet gun doesn't actually rotate, means that you're going to have a hard time. You know, when he shoots, a lot of times he's kind of looking down looking from his eye down his arm, and the gun is sitting there right on top. And as far as posing, you know, being a big comic nerd and having action figures on my shelf and playing with them, you know, I want him to have more of that accurate look. And unfortunately, that's as good as you're going to be able to do. It's more like Attack of the Zombies there. It's just kind of hanging off to the side. There's no real way to do it the way it needs to be done. You do have the bullets on the shoulder, though. You do have the extra ammo pouch down there. He is wearing the headphone on the side so he can communicate as well. So he looks pretty good as a figure. This is one where I think the articulation really kind of hurts him. If they had had the articulation like maybe some of the earlier Infinite Heroes figures that Mattel had done in the past, I think he would have looked a whole lot nicer. So overall, I'd say this line is pretty good. My one big complaint, I guess, would be the Asriel figure. He's the one that really doesn't do it for me. They just should have maybe cooked him in development a little bit longer in order to make him up to the same standards as the other characters. But as far as the rest of these guys go, I like them. I think I'm pretty happy with this line overall. If I can find that Mr. Freeze, I will buy him. If I see, you know, more of these figures, I'll probably keep buying them. As a fan of this size scale, I think they all look pretty nice, and they're going to work well with a lot of your other characters. If we look at some like, say, the Marvel Universe ones, I think they just kind of fit in perfectly, the same scale as those. The old Infinite Hero figures, these are a tad smaller, a hair smaller, but overall I think they go hand in hand okay. But the DC Collectibles line, that is obviously, this has got to be 3 3/4 inch, whereas that one's more of a 4-inch line, because there is a giant difference in size between these characters, and so those are just not going to work as well together. But overall, thumbs up. I enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, you can go to popculturenetwork.com to check out some of the other great stuff we do. We've got comic reviews that come every week. We've got other toy videos. We've got Mr. TF Prime covering all stuff, Transformers and Power Rangers. I think we're going to start doing some Formers Fridays again, where you get Transformers videos on Fridays. We've got Pop Culture Network, the show. We got one of those cooking. We may bring back Pop Culture Network Radio. We're still kind of talking about that one a little bit. So anyway, come by the website, check out comic previews, toy news, all of that great stuff at popculturenetwork.com. Don't forget to go to jointheforums.com, the official forums of the Pop Culture Network. And you can call our 24-hour voicemail line if you want to talk about these toys, you want to talk about anything else. Call our number. It's area code 217-953-4025. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can leave us a voicemail message. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.